tenants and just acknowledge that Jeff Souter, Philip Marshall, Adam DeFore, and Danielle Walker, and David Hoare are present. Absent. I know Scott Modlin said he had a conflict. And then we've got a
Jim Day of sickness.
and then we've got
Sean
Day sent
Humphrey.
a resignation letter in.
Correct.
And the commissioners did discuss a potential replacement for her. I know you've not taken that up here officially, but I guess we'll address that later. So at this time, the statute says that at the first meeting of the year, the planning commission is required to elect from its membership a president and a vice president who will stand in and run the meetings in the absence of the president. And so I would go ahead and open it up and ask for, see if there's any motions to be made for president. And at that time, we would then turn it over.
Now, John,
Any motions for president?
I'll make the motion for David Hoare to be the president.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Jeff Souter and seconded by Phil Marshall to reappoint, re-elect David Hoare as president. Is there any discussion or any further nominations?
I'll move that the nominations be closed for president.
Jeff Souter moves that they be closed. Adam DeFore seconds. I'd ask all in favor of David Hoare presiding as president for the year 2013 for Washington County Planning Commission. Please raise your right hand. All those opposed? Okay. It's unanimous, 5-0. At this time, I would turn it over to President Hoare.
Thank you, Tom. We'll go ahead and we'll ask for nominations for vice president to hold the meetings while in the absence of the president. Do I have a nomination from the commission for vice president?
I'll nominate Adam DeFore for vice president.
We have a motion for Adam DeFore. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Philip Marshall. Are there any more nominations for vice president? If not, ask for closure.
I'll move that nominations for vice president be closed.
Jeff Souter is made for closure. Second,
Second.
Philip Marshall. Is closed. Unanimous. Or is Adam DeFore? We'll take to a vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All against, same. Motion unanimous. Okay. Confirmation of legal counsel. We've had Tom Cyphers as our legal counsel for the Planning Commission. I'll make the, well, I don't think I can do that. But
I'll make a motion to retain.
Okay, Phil Marshall has made the motion, second by Adam DeFore. Seeing nobody else that wants to be legal counsel. So,
I make a motion to close.
proposed by Philip Marshall, and second by Adam DeFore. Made to a vote, all in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Unanimous. Confirmation of claim director. We currently have Travis Elliott taking care of that position. I have a nomination for confirm. Travis Elliott as Plan Commission.
I say yes.
Adam DeFleur,
Yep.
Philip Marshall, second. Open for discussion. Seeing none, we'll take it to a vote. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, same. Motion carried. Calendar of meetings. We have been currently meeting on the first Monday, except for this, because this is our first meeting where we set the calendar and also have to have appointments made by the councils and by the commission. And so we have deferred to make it later, meeting or the first Monday of every month. Is that gonna be any conflict for 2013, or is there another date to be set?
There's Memorial Day, Labor Day, New Year's. Doesn't Memorial Day always been on Monday? Or Labor Day always been on Monday? So that's obviously.
So that those two, as far as acknowledged holidays, all will be deferred to, and I think there's a conflict with Tuesdays. For this meeting.
City meeting here.
I think the city plan commission meets on Tuesday.
And the city council also meets on
Monday, they meet on Monday the 2nd, because that was last night. So I recommend that we go for the Tuesday following, be the second Tuesday of those holidays, Memorial Day and Labor Day, that follow Monday. They hold the rest on Monday.
Memorial Day falls on May 27th. So that really doesn't affect the June meeting.
All right? Labor Day is the only one.
Labor Day is the only one that I see.
Okay. So if we met on the 10th of September, that would accommodate that. That's a Tuesday, the second week.
I got a feeling that might be a conflict with a city board meeting here, but I'll check on that.
All right, we can check on that. It is a will to look at first Monday of the month as our primary date. We'll have to look in for availability of this room on that September meeting.
I move that we make it for the first Monday of the month, with the exception of the September meeting.
All right.
In lieu of finding out what that day's going to be.
Okay. We have a motion for the first Monday of the month, except for September, looking at the days as far as when this room will be available. Second by Philip Marshall. It's open for discussion. Seeing none, we'll take it to a vote. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, same. Motion carried unanimously. Going back to the minutes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Just point of clarification, secretary is an optional position under the statute, and in the past I've done that, accepting my absence, then the plan director has taken care of that. Is that something that we intended to continue to happen?
I've got legal counsel slash secretary, but I did not make that as an open remark, but I'm thinking legal counsel as secretary also.
I'll move we continue the past practice of having legal counsel serve as secretary, and in lieu of his absence, the planning director.
All right. Jeff Souter has made a motion to have legal counsel be the secretary. In the absence of Travis Elliott, our coordinator will be will take the minutes. Do I have a second? Danielle Walker has made a second. We're open for discussion. Seeing none, we'll take it to a vote. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, same. Unanimous. Okay. Minutes from the previous meeting, December the 3rd.
I have here the minutes of the December 3rd meeting, which I believe were emailed out.
Yes.
I don't know if you want us to move to adopt them.
I wasn't even here.
And he hasn't seen them, so
So,
need to read them because we have in the absence and that, so you have them.
or, yeah, I got them, or we could wait until the next meeting because two of them weren't here, although I think legally they could vote on it if they.
So it's the preference of the commission to wait till the next meeting to adopt the minutes.
I move we table the minutes until the next meeting.
All right, Gary Saunders made a motion to table, Item DeFour is second, so open for discussion. Seeing none, we'll take to a vote, all in favor of tabling, raise your right hand. All opposed, same, motion carried. Okay, we'll table those to,
And then I need to send them out to you, correct?
all right. First, I would like, on behalf of the board, I would welcome everyone to the current meeting of tonight for the Washington County Planning Commission. Everyone who appears before the Planning Commission is entitled to the legal right of due process. Therefore, everyone present who wants to will be given a chance to speak. We will ask that when you are called upon, that you speak. You will state your name, address for the record. Okay. Committee reports. A response to Kevin Rose facility petition. I think that we kind of addressed the petition that was brought to us. It was basically out of our jurisdiction of what we could do. Have that here. So, I wanted to relay that to you. I will read this and I will respond to this. Now I request Kevin Rose to build and operate 4 boiler barns housing 32,100 boilers each, compost litter, storage building of solid manure. We also request that he not be allowed to broadcast spread the manure on location at 1718 South Brown Lane, Salem, Indiana, 47167, Section 30, Township 2 North, R5E. Building of these 4 roller barns will bring the total roller houses to 7 to adjoining parcels of land. The roadway is too narrow for the additional semi trucks that drive down the roadway during the hours of night. The additional houses will also attract more predatory animals, including coyotes, which will threaten cattle and other farm animals. With the additional houses being built on property values, inevitably impact as well as potential for there to 7 empty boiler houses if the industry takes downturn. The occurrence of Tyson Incorporated semi-truck speeding on South Boston Lane, Salem, Indiana, 47167 has increased over the past 4 years, and with the additional roller houses and semi-trucks, traffic will move them more than double, and this will cause unsafe driving conditions. If a vehicle is driving down South Brown Lane and a semi-truck is coming down the roadway in opposite direction, the other vehicle will have to pull off the roadway to avoid a collision, and lowering the speed limit on South Brown Lane from 45 to 35 miles per hour should be considered. To add 4 houses will be more than double the odors that will negatively impact our property values and can negatively impact the ecology of the area. Due to the potential of the spread of diseases, 4 proposed roller houses are too close to proximity to the 3 roller houses owned by Kevin Pickerel, located at 1588 South Brown Lane, Salem, Indiana. Petition is presented to Travis Elliott, Brown Commissioner. Petition to be presented Monday, December 3rd, meeting, Planning Commission meeting at City Hall, and the petition may be submitted to the courts at a later date. And after that, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 signatures. We did listen to this at the last meeting, and there's a lot of things that are in there, a lot of things that we don't have any jurisdiction over. And currently, we do not have any ordinance that keeps him from doing that. So we are not, as far as what I see with the plan commission, can even accept or even utilize this in anything that we have to deny that he, and we don't have the authority to deny it anyway.
We do have the existing ordinance that was passed by the county commissioners with that large, the 750-foot setback.
All right.
And that's the only ordinance, it's the only ordinance that we've got, and that's generally been handled by the plan director to go out and.
All right, Travis, have you gone out and actually looked at this property in that and seen if it's on the setback requirements?
No.
All right. Have you been asked to go out and do that?
No.
All right.
I think an appropriate thing to do would be to look at the proposed addition. Do I understand correctly that you're looking at an addition of structures,
Yes.
expansion?
Yeah, the expansion, it's not actually their expansion, it's actually an individual that is putting in facilities beside existing facilities that are in a different ownership. That,
I don't know, that's.
They're a different ownership?
yes.
Okay.
And it is a housing, 32,000, I guess it is.
Per house, that's.
Yeah. So there's an IDM permit.
500-foot house.
Yeah, so there's an IDM permit
Right. But
involved.
right now, the 750-foot setback
Is the only thing.
is what's on the books now, because nothing else has been passed, so that's an old ordinance, and I guess.
Yeah, and until we change anything, that's still an ordinance.
Yeah, it has to meet those requirements and it has to meet IDM requirements, and that's all, anything that this board has the power to regulate.
And what I see, the operation permit is asked for CFO approval. And I don't see where it's been denied by the state. So Travis, I guess by the planning commission, we need to give him the authority and have it checked out.
Well, and generally, the request is that the applicant actually notify the plan director of the intent to expand.
Right.
So, you'll have to.
We need to pursue this with Travis, to make this.
We did the same thing when Sean Humphrey was looking to expand.
Correct.
So,
All right. Going back into committee reports, land use, and this is gonna be Carrie Steele in there. I'm gonna give you the floor.
Unfortunately, I didn't have a way, my projector, the bulb went out. So all I have tonight is handouts,
Okay.
so I apologize for that. The map is the worst one for this particular format, obviously, this is just a very general picture, but it gets the point across of what we're gonna talk about. Oh, sorry. Okay, the copies that I handed out, the first thing is, the most recent version of the ordinance, it's the one that has a table of contents. And then the page by itself has animal unit definition, and I wanna talk about it, in a minute. Lastly was the map.
Okay.
Essentially, Tom and I talked today, and there's several things that I want to cover tonight, but to clear up one big misconception I think that Tom had, and I'm wondering if Tom had the same thing. I want to make sure that everybody understands. If he had a question, I'll make sure everybody understands this, and that's why the animal unit definition and the calculation table is there. Essentially, in the committee, and even before the committee, before I was even hired, the board and the committee members were most concerned with farms that were unregulated by the state, so smaller farms that could pop up without any kind of siding at all. And we wanted to be able to catch those smaller farms that would come in that may be too close to the road, too close to houses that didn't have any regulation at all. And through the committee, we decided that essentially we wanted to catch the 2 barn turkey houses was one of the main issues in your community. And so that number came out in the committee was 18,000. So if you can see on this animal unit calculation table, turkeys is towards the bottom, and that's the 18,000 number. Animal units are defined by the amount of waste that is produced per animal, and that's why you see things, for example, there's chickens in a wet system, which means, you know, they basically have water introduced, it's a liquid manure, versus chickens that are in a dry system because, you know, they basically fall under, there's usually kind of a high rise, it's a drier material, they produce less waste in that system. So what we did was we said, we used the animal unit factor, which is the column titled number 3, and backfilled in what the animal unit, or what the animal numbers were, so that we had approximately 320-ish animal units for every species of livestock. We didn't want this to be a turkey rule. So you'll see that, for example, if there's 250 dairy cows, the cows is the dairy cow number. I apologize, just got cut off in the, I ran this off just kind of last minute today, but that first one, so for example, there's 250 dairy cows is equivalent to about 350 animal units, give or take, and that is lower than the IDIM threshold, which is 300. The IDIM numbers, the 300 cattle, 600 swine, and 30,000 birds, as David has mentioned before, that was just somebody throwing a dart at the board years ago. Those numbers don't really correlate with waste production, and so that's why we took those numbers out. And actually, one of the things I caught in the ordinance, because of going through this again, if you can see the swine over 55 pounds and swine over and under 55 pounds, going off of animal units, they could actually put 850 head over, so a finishing pig, and 3,300 nursery pigs. Under your ordinance, that would be the strict animal unit. But you want to be sure that you adhere to the state, so we changed all those. In the ordinance itself, you'll see we went with the state 600 number to make sure that the last thing we wanted was a 600 head nursery barn going in that didn't fall under your ordinance. Meanwhile, there were smaller turkey facilities that fell under your ordinance. We wanted to be as across the board as we could, and that's why I passed out this animal unit kind of definition and blow by blow and how that all worked. And just to kind of give you guys some sense that we didn't just throw darts at the board like the 300, 600, and 30,000 number that the state uses.
So if I can try to restate and make sure I understand, the goal is to control or regulate waste output.
Yes.
And so if we use beef cattle as the starting proposition, say, okay, beef cattle at a certain number of head of cattle, we reach a point of waste product that needs to be regulated. Then they come up with multiplier factors for different types of animals and say, okay, as compared to a beef cattle, a hog is going to put out this much. It might be a factor of 0.8.
Right.
A bird, a turkey is going to be a factor of 0.03 or whatever, as far as what percentage of waste is going to be.
Right.
And so what you do is you back into the number. So if the number that needs to be regulated on beef cattle is X, based on the waste product, then you use that waste multiplier to come up with what's the appropriate number of head of turkeys or chickens.
Exactly.
Or veal or ducks.
Exactly.
Or whatever. So these numbers, and with the exception of, because swine, that number takes us to a number higher than the state.
And the chickens did the same thing, we cut that early on. Chickens originally were like 41,000 on a dry system. Were equivalent to 18,000 turkeys. We caught that early, you know, that we didn't want that gap, so we just honestly, I stared at it so much I didn't catch the swine until I went through this.
Well, I can tell you, as far as working with the confined feeding law back in 1997, you know, that particular draft, I did not pick it up because I figured that all those manure loads were, you know, calculated per animal, and that's how they come up with their factors. Until this exercise that we did, that I become enlightened that it was more of a political move as far as picking a number than it was actually a scientific number. So our numbers actually bring more science to the
Right.
table as far as actual manure production per animal. So,
Right. And I could bore you with when that happened. Like 72 is when they did the first confined feeding control out. 1976 is when they did the 300, 600, 30,000. And it was part of the reason.
Okay.
It was just who in office then, and again, I'm the only geek in the world that finds that interesting.
All right. But I wanted to make it sure that while we were doing this, to be fair, even though we were
Yeah.
trying to get to reduce numbers, that we tried to make adjustments to the other species.
Right, I mean, because the overall goal is to make sure that you don't have a farm that has an impact like a CFO or a CAFO as defined by the state. You want to be sure that those farms that have that same kind of impact are regulated at your county level the same way. That was the goal, and that's why we backed into those numbers. And after Tom and I talked about it today, I just thought it would be helpful to pass that out for you guys to kind of talk about it a little bit.
Very good.
So the next thing is that when you guys go through this, and I know I apologize for not having it out to y'all sooner, essentially you can see through the table of contents the things that are added are general information, which is just things like the title and purpose, how to make amendments to the zoning code, the severability clause, and jurisdiction, which the jurisdiction is one of the things I want to talk about tonight to make sure I have everything taken care of in the map. Basically, right now, the jurisdiction says everything in Washington County except for Salem and their 2-mile fringe. But I think that there's another community that took the 2-mile fringe, and I couldn't find my notes on it, and I can't find it anywhere else.
It's live on you.
Okay.
Did they take a 2-mile fringe?
Yes.
Now, Pekin and Campbell's were incorporated,
Yes.
but they don't have a 2-mile fringe.
Not that I'm aware of it. I know live on you did.
Don't they need to be excluded as well?
No, they'll have to go through, the way it is right now, if we leave, even though they're incorporated, and usually what happens is their town boards or, you know, city boards or whatever they've incorporated as, would have to adopt the ordinance as well. Through, you see what I mean, like after it comes through here, it would go to them before it went to the commissioners, or I don't remember the order, I think it goes commissioners and then them.
If they wanted to be regulated.
Which really, the way that the zoning code is set up right now, there's no, all they're gonna assign to is, there's no regulations in our community. That's the only, that's what I want, that's another thing we'll get to in just a minute, but, you know, right now, it wouldn't affect them any, the zoning code wouldn't affect them.
Right. So, but it says all of Washington County excluding Salem
Because they've,
and the 2-mile fringe.
yes, so we need to add the Livonia and their 2-mile fringe to that statement. And then, on the map, you can see, get my copy out.
I can see Pekin and Campbell put it on that.
Yeah, so right now, the pink obviously is Salem.
Right.
So the 2-mile fringe will go around them. We'll have Livonia, and the reason I left it this way, we'll take Livonia out with the 2-mile fringe around it, and it will essentially be white spots on this map that are not regulated
Right.
on the official zoning map. The other areas that are highlighted, that are blocked out, are what we would consider when you look at page 6, we define what a residential district is. And those spots would be quote unquote the residential district, and everything else would be ag district. when I was hired to do the zoning code and we've gone through the committee, essentially my directive from the committees and from the board was, we really don't want, extensive zoning. We don't want we don't want restrictive zoning for every little thing. We just want a basic, we want this confined feeding section in it, but in order to get that, we have to have more. We had to have a whole code written.
Right, and you have to have a map.
So right now, those areas that are blocked out, besides Salem and Livonia, the only thing it says is that they're a residential district and there's nothing else.
Right. So basically, the towns are the residential districts.
Exactly,
That's
exactly.
Exactly what I was, yeah, answers the question.
And that's why we couldn't, in the end, we couldn't even, the discussion about reciprocal distance or reciprocal setbacks didn't really matter because we didn't have a way to enforce it on a residential district that we weren't adding anything to. So, you couldn't say, right now there's nothing for residences in the community to have to adhere to other than, state building codes, things like that, not necessarily land use, so that's why I doubt very seriously if those communities that are incorporated that don't take the fringe, I doubt that they'll be worried by this. So there's only 2 zones when you look at the map, Ag.
Agriculture and residential.
and residential. There are 2 things that have left to be developed that they won't take very long. I just ran out of time, quite frankly. The nonconformity and the definitions are 2 things that I need to add back in. That's written on page 5. You can see sections 4 and section 5 need to be finished, but everything else is in there in terms of, I'll fix that jurisdiction information. Tom sent some revisions to me today, but I didn't have time to change them before I came up today. Some wording things, nothing that changed in my opinion. Substance, just typos and making sure things read better, things like that. So, is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, we had because I wasn't part of the drafting, but I wanted to be on kind of the review and look at it with a fresh set when it was done. And so this morning, I had to go to Indianapolis today, so this morning I came in and printed it out and hand wrote some changes. There's some things that I caught on my first read through, but I really would like, I don't know, I think Jeff maybe signed up,
I'm on the draft with.
or the review.
I'm on the review, I'm not on the draft.
That's what I mean, the review.
That's to like go.
Probably what I ought to do is show my just handwritten, like, grammatical wording or whatever
No, you're not
that I
gonna have
did,
feelings.
and just email, show you kind of what I propose. But anyway, I think there's some things in there.
Yeah, the only thing is that there isn't a review committee anymore because all the subcommittees were abolished.
Oh, that's right.
So that's why, I was just going to Tom. I didn't have a committee to go to. So it's not that I didn't want, I just wasn't sure what to do.
We can just review the thing.
Right.
Exactly,
Just
as
do it.
board members. I
As-
think
as
that
the-
makes
as the
sense. I
planning
just,
commission, that's.
I just wasn't sure how to go forward, to be quite
We'll
truthful.
just- Whenever we get the final draft, when it's all figured out, we'll just all read through it and here at a meeting, if we wanna make any changes, we could probably just make them right here and make motions to do it and approve something.
Okay, I think that makes sense. And honestly,
We'll
the,
do it.
is this, I guess my first question to the board is, overall, is this what you had in mind? What I'm presenting tonight, the concept?
As far as I know, it is. I mean,
Yeah, I think, I don't remember when exactly it was, but I think that was the idea of what we wanted to do. Now, we do have a subdivision control ordinance, but that's separate from this, and not really part of this. And so, but when I see the definition of the residential, basically, there's no regulation on that, it's just
it's just a
residential.
zone, it has to be listed on that.
Yeah.
There's no regulation at all, and there's hardly any regulation on the agricultural thing. You can pretty much do, it's spells it out there on page 6, you can still pretty much do anything anyone ever does.
Mhm.
It just has to say that that's an agricultural zone, so we know what we're talking about.
I think what I think would be good is if we can make this available
Yes,
to the public and to you, to everyone, because I read it this morning.
Yeah, but once it's done, I mean,
Yeah,
I wouldn't,
I would,
copy at the library yet, it's got,
I,
whole sections that aren't done yet,
but, you know, whenever the spelling corrections and those type of things are made, we'll make it like the comprehensive plan available at the libraries.
Prior to public hearing.
Yes.
Right.
But I'd like to discuss out loud at least.
I would like to discuss 601.2 through 4. I'd like to go line by line in that section.
Starting at 601
To developmental standards for CFOs.
is that, and it's just so for clarification, is that, do you wanna do that tonight, or is that,
I would like, because we got enough audience here, I would like to present that.
it's fine. I have a couple of extra copies, I don't think I have clearly enough for everybody, but I can pass out what I have, you guys can kind of share around.
The top of page 7. Where we're at.
Which is the 3. If you'd like, I'll go ahead, I'll just read the first line, and then we can discuss, is that, or would you like to read it, David?
Please.
601.2 is developmental standards for CFOs, and the first point, 601.2.1, all manure storage structures, animal confinement buildings, and dead animal compost areas associated with a CFO. And again, the definition of a CFO based in Washington County is it is 250 dairy cows, 350 veal calves, 350 beef cattle, 600 head of swine, 170 horses, 3,300 sheep or lambs, 18,000 turkeys, 10,000 laying hens or broilers using a liquid system, 30,000 chickens other than laying hens if they use a dry manure handling system, 27,000 laying hens if the operation uses a dry manure handling system, 10,000 ducks on a dry manure handling system, or 1,700 ducks on a wet manure handling system. So, the first thing that all of those structures, all manure storage structures, animal confinement buildings, and dead animal compost areas associated with the CFO, number 1, must be located a minimum of 400 feet from an existing off-site residence, public use facility, or church, and this shall be measured from the nearest CFO structure, including lagoons, to the nearest house, public use facility, or church.
Okay. Any discussion on that line? That's basically an IDM regulation.
Yep.
Okay, go to the next one.
Item number 2 is that it must be located at least 3,960 feet from all schools. That number was derived in a public meeting, actually live with the,
Can we ask questions?
At this time, if you do.
My name's Gary Barriger. I live at 1956 South Conway Church Road. What's the difference between a school and a house?
in the definitions.
No, not a definition. Why is it different? Why do you need a different distance?
Well, that's used commonly. There's bigger, larger setback language between schools than what there is residence.
But why?
That's been a common practice of most zoning ordinances.
So the children in school is different than the children at a house?
If you go through the Indiana Land Resource Council, who was developed, it's a nonpartisan group appointed by the governor that set out several different model ordinances, and this is honestly, everything here is language straight out of that Land Resource Council. the 3/4 of a mile was developed specifically for your community, you know, during a public meeting here. But the differentiation between a house and a school or church or things like that is a concept that was developed through that Land Resource Council and through several other sources. It's like David said, number one, it's well used throughout the industry and throughout communities.
It's
I
stable.
understand that, but you're basically saying that a child at home is worth less than a child at school.
I'm not saying that, sir.
Are you sure? Because this is what you prepared for us, right?
The
It does
state-
not say that.
The state of Indiana has definitions for a house, a school.
A house is
They're
very,
defined by Indiana law, if you read IC.
Right, and I understand that. And this committee can change those. They don't have to follow them.
That's right.
Is that correct?
We're developing in full.
I understand that. That's why I'm here. I'm concerned about it.
Well, we're not only trying to implement something for Washington County, but use much guidance and as far as much scientific information and things that are commonly used also in the state of Indiana to give us guidance for
And
our
I think
recommendations.
and I agree that if you use some scientific and good data, that makes sense, but just following what's been done in the past, because it's already been stated that these numbers were kind of just pulled out of the air. Correct? Didn't you
These are not
did you
just-
state that
no,
earlier?
sir, they were not just pulled out of the air, and honestly,
One of the things we can do is we can research, why do they do that?
Would you like to know some more about that, how that figure was come out?
If I could,
All right,
yes.
we'll make a point of note on that.
What are the state setbacks
to a church,
to a church and a school and a house? On
400 feet from a residence, and everything else is 100 foot from a property line. So if you have a church and you're a regulated facility, you know, currently, right now, that's one of the things right now in Washington County, if you get an IDEM permit for a facility, so if you have a facility that's 30,000 birds or above, or a hog farm that's over 600 head of hogs, you can put that 400 foot from a house, from a residence, 100 foot from a property line, and 100 foot from a county road.
So the IDEM regulation doesn't have a differentiation between houses and schools for
No.
IDEM purposes?
None at all.
I mean, our number is high enough for IDEM.
Yes, and there's none at all.
Okay, I didn't.
You could actually put it 100 foot from the property line of the school, according to IDEM. We're just adding additional protection for the schools to the community. Kind of shocks me that we're being taken to task on that.
And IDEM used to be 100 feet from the house too.
From the property line,
Yeah.
yes, so if your house is
So
right on the property
technically,
line, then.
If your property line was 1 foot from the house, you could put one 101 feet from the house. So IDEM just changed that to 400 this past year.
July was when it became
July
effective.
became effective.
Yeah, so.
Okay. Yes.
My name's Larry Lang. I live at 938 South State Road 135 in about a month, 48 years. I've been a taxpayer in this county since I was 18 years old. I lived in the country all my life. And anybody that passed that 400 foot from residence, they ain't lived out here by one of them houses. It needs to be 1,200 feet at least. How do I know? I've got a daughter and a son-in-law and 2 grandkids that live within 1,500 feet of 9 chicken houses. And I mean, they're the legal size, 40,000 per head per batch. And half the time, they cannot sit outside. And anybody that's lived in the country by one of these buildings, and I ain't never lived that close, but I drive by them, and I know the smell, and these people evidently were in Indianapolis that made this 400-foot law, because it's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard in my life. And if Washington County can't change that to at least 800 or 1,200 feet, we're a bunch of weasels to our citizens of this county. And you know what? Do we know how many animal units that this county will support? And then we're gonna work down on that. You should, the state of Indiana ought to know for every acre of open ground, how many animal units this county will support. I got news for you, it can get so bad, like it did in about 10 years ago in the state of North Carolina. They had 800 confinement hog houses in there. You know what the governor did? He said, no more. No more. Now, I ain't calling him to see if he's opening them up and letting them build any more or not, but he said that was enough. So how much is going to be enough for Washington County? And if you people won't change the law from at least 800 to 1,200 feet setback, I think you're a bunch of weasels. And you ain't taking care of our citizens that want to live out here in the country, and that's other people that ain't got one of these houses and breathe healthy air. The air's polluted enough the way it is. And then we're going to pollute it a little bit more. And, you know, Cullman, Alabama, about 40 years ago, they had 200 units of nitrogen per acre in that county. And that included the hills and forest. You know what? You go down there now, the last time I was through there, they ain't got no chicken houses. The corporations left. I don't know why, but these corporations that put these turkeys in and these chickens, they divide up the country. In other words, one company won't move in on another company. And this is a known fact. So I just think we are a little smarter than that, 400 feet, because I say that was put out by somebody that never lived in the country or never lived by one of these things. And let's get with the program and do what's right for our citizens.
Thank you, Larry. All right. Can we go on to the next one? And 200 feet.
The facility must be located at least 200 feet from the center of any county road. The next line item goes with it, so I'm going to go ahead and state it, that it must also be located 200 feet from all property lines. So 200 feet from the center of a county road and 200 feet from all property lines.
Okay.
There are no reciprocal setbacks, correct?
No. Additional standards, a cul-de-sac or T-shaped turnaround shall be provided so that vehicles need not back out into the street or the roadway.
Okay.
Essentially, the next one is on access. It says access if the property of the proposed operation does not abut a public road. It may be provided access with a 50-foot wide strip of land which connects the public right-of-way with the lot, and a 50-foot strip of land is platted as part of the lot. So for example, if you have a landlocked area, this just provides access to that county road to make sure that they can get to a public right-of-way. It probably shouldn't be under additional standards, but it prevents a landlocked owner from getting a permit and then not have a way to get out to the road. That's all that is, Tom. I know you questioned it.
Well, yeah, and as a general proposition, land won't be landlocked, because if anything, there's an easement.
Yeah, in the state of Indiana, you can't
There's
have
no
land
easement.
The thing is this stops it from being just the easement, I think. I think it has to be platted with the property.
Okay.
And then we can discuss, you
Yeah,
know.
I'll reread that, but I didn't understand that, that's why I put the question marks on it.
An existing CFO in this zone that is a non-conforming use, so, an operation that currently has, has 18, or, let's say 16,000 turkeys on site, that maybe doesn't fit, they're constructed right now. We enact the zoning code tomorrow, it instantly becomes a non-conforming use. So that's what we're discussing here. An existing CFO in the zone that is a non-conforming use may expand their operation providing they meet all of the items within, and there's a typo, within the developmental standards, such as the 400 feet from the house, the church, the public use facility, the schools, and the property lines and centers of roads. So if they can meet all of those things, then they may expand their operations. Their new buildings would have to meet the setback criteria that we talked about at the beginning.
We have a question from the audience.
Yeah,
Yes, I'll recognize you. Please
Uh,
state your name.
my name's Jerry McKnight. I live at 9304 East Garrison Hollow Road.
Jerry McKnight.
How many turkey houses and how many chicken houses is there in Washington County?
We don't have a specific count.
You don't have the number?
Oh my God.
is it true that each one of them houses paid $5,000 in taxes?
That I don't know, that's another.
That's what I've always heard. In fact, I think that's been in the paper.
It'll go with the assessment.
That's probably why we don't have any regulations.
It goes on assessed value. It'd be the same as what you would on any confined feeding operation building as far as its taxes in there. It'd be-
The thing of it is, a guy like me, I've lived out in the country for 20 years. I'm not a farmer, but I raised my kids out in the country, and I've lived out in the country for 20 years because I like to live there. And I feel like I've got just as much right to live there as anyone else. And I just feel like it's kind of stomping on rights of regular people that like to live there.
Okay.
I live in, well, there's 5 or 6 houses that are around me, close. But, here about a year or so ago, they was gonna put a chicken house right across the road. Nobody knew anything about it till the ball got to rolling. And come to find out, the guy couldn't, get a permit to get trucks in and out. He couldn't get a right of way, so it didn't go in, but he had a farm. Why didn't he want to live there? He was gonna put it on 5 or 6 acres of land where he wasn't gonna live.
I'm not
People
sure.
should probably direct their comments and questions to the
Well,
planning
I'm just-
commission. Well, just, in her defense, she's just.
I'm not
Let me finish.
Yeah.
Let me
Well,
finish my sentence.
I mean,
In
he
her-
directed,
I
I'm
know
running
these people are
notes.
the ones that need to hear it.
Just,
You're the committee.
just for the record, my next door neighbor has chicken houses. 4.
Huh?
My next door neighbor has 4 chicken houses. I've lived on Hill Farm Road my whole life, since I was like 2 days old. And my next door neighbor built chicken houses 10 years ago, and 2 more a couple of years ago. So there's 4 there now. So I know all about it.
Well, I know David there has chicken house, don't you?
No, I have a hog operation.
Well, I knew you had a hog operation, but I thought you had a chicken
No.
operation too.
And I live within probably 350 feet of my hog operation.
Nothing wrong with that.
So, all right, we're writing your notes down, and then as you get in there, I will try to get this information as far as, if you, as far as the, the number of chicken and turkey houses, we can, might not be right to the point, remember, we can get you to kind of a generalization, if that's information you'd like to have.
And I'd like to know.
I also relay in there that I live in the country also, and I also make a living in the country also. And I know that the people that are putting these operations up are making a living off of doing that, and paying taxes. So we are, here at the Plan Commission Board, are trying to get a balance here of, of rights of individuals, residential, or in farming, or making their living off of the land. A lot of times, some of the friction is that agriculture has changed, quite a bit in the last few years. And sometimes the farming operations look quite a bit different than what they did 30 and 40 years ago. But as your cars have changed in technology, so has the agriculture industry, and that's gone with the buildings. It's not necessarily that they're so environmentally bad, as they could be perceived because of their large numbers. In fact, I will tell you, as far as an example, that 50 years ago, my grandfather raised hogs outside. Now, I do not. But the hogs were out there on the property, and they run out on the ground. They run through the streams. They run on the hillsides and they run through the woods. And I can tell you through experiences of that there was a lot of erosion that happened because of that. There was a lot of contamination in the streams where those hogs went across those streams and watered in those streams. My operation is quite different. My animals do not ever see the stream, they're inside, and we apply the manure is according to nutrient management that I do. I do soil testing and I apply the manures to the ground. So there has been changes in agriculture. Not all of them have been bad.
I would like, as a completely educational, I'll remove myself as the writer, as the contractor that, just put things down on paper, and to the point of how many buildings are in Washington County, I can, within 24 hours, nobody can be the sum of all knowledge. I cannot remember how many buildings specifically are permitted in this county, but I can tell you that there are 9 permitted facilities in this county, and the data on how many buildings are permitted with those 9 it's available. It's available to you as the public, it's available to me. Might be a little easier for me to access just because I know the right person to call right away. More than happy to get that information to you. Based on that data, I can tell you that Washington County currently utilizes less than 2% of their available land for manure placement. So for example, if you take, let's just say that there's, and I know these are not the right numbers, so do not hold me to them, but let's say there's 10,000 turkeys, 10,000 chickens, and 10,000 hogs. And if you do the math on how much those animals produce, and you take an industry average of the N, P, and K that is produced by those animals, and divide it by the number of acres that are tillable within your county, less than 2% of the ground receives manure from facilities that are permitted, or could, if you put it on in that way. That doesn't mean it goes here, because I'm sure that there's a facility that sits on the county line and they own ground over here that goes over there. So things like that happen. The reason that the board and myself do not know exactly how many barns there are in this community is because they're not regulated. No one is required to come to anybody and say, I have 2 chicken barns, I have 3 turkey barns, I have whatever, because they're not required to. So there's no, yes, we can comb through, somebody can comb through the tax records and find out which buildings are identified as livestock, but they're not required to report what livestock is in there or how many are in there. So for example, my understanding is you have a large Amish population, and there may be 7 barns on there that are identified as livestock, as holding livestock. Well, there might be 2 horses in one. That doesn't fit into our definition, but there's no way possible for us to determine that. The data just isn't available. We can get as close as we can, but, everybody seemed very disappointed that that number wasn't just right there, but it is nearly an impossible number to get your arms around, especially in a community that has seen expansion of non-regulated facilities. They're not a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination, they're just untracked. So, educational spiel over.
Okay. Yes.
My name's Marilyn Keenan. I live at 9128 East State Road 160. And one of my concerns is they have to be allotted so much room to turn these trucks around. There's not supposed to be 18-wheelers on 160. I've had to take the ditch twice of these trucks hauling these chickens and run me off the road. That concerns me.
Okay. There is a regulation against 18-wheelers on 160?
Yes, there is. There's a sign.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
For through traffic.
It's for through traffic, it's not for local traffic.
I know, but I've been around off the road more than that, but it wasn't only by hauling chickens, but it's not a road that 18-wheelers should be on, period.
I think that the ordinance was
You
put
can
in place so that, unfortunately, Google Maps and some of MapQuest, unfortunately, whenever you plug it into those machines, take you from 65, 160 as being the closest route to.
Right.
And that was
The
being,
sign says.
that was
Yeah,
being,
the sign.
that was being utilized that way, and so I think that's posted that that type of semi-traffic's not coming down there. But as far as local traffic, I don't think there's anything against local traffic.
But that's why I'm saying they should be located someplace else, rather than have to use 160.
Okay?
That's,
Okay. All right, where are we at here?
The rest of the information is on application requirements. Is that something you want to go through?
To apply with the plan director.
Basically, the application requirements talks about how the maps are to be made on certain sheets of paper, to be 8.5 inches by 11 inches, just kind of standard dimensions of it. The application have a minimum clearly states the owner and the operator, location of facility, and a fee of $250. And then, once we receive that, and with the fees, the plan director shall has a decision within the 30 business days. And if the application is approved, the plan director will provide adequate permits. And if the plan director is not able to look at it, then the Washington County Plan Commission shall act as the director. And so that just kind of gives you an idea of the information and who's going to be reviewing it. There is, I'll point in here for variance for a development standard. You can ask for a variance, and we've already missed something. Okay. And the variance must be recorded in the deed. So, the other is definitions.
Yeah, and the variance that he, just as a quick sideline, the variance that he talked about is if the facility happens to be 150 foot from a property line, but the owner of the property on the other side of the line is okay with that, that owner can add a written statement to his deed that that farm is located closer than the 200 feet. So as long as the aggrieved person, the person that is infringed upon is okay with it and pays for the applicant pays for that to be put on the deed, it's not burdensome on the county, just provides a way. So for example, if, Johnny's putting up a facility and, Uncle Joe owns the land across, that way they don't have to, put it in the middle of a 40-acre field to get everything. They can put it up in the corner so that they can still farm the rest of the 40 acres because Uncle Joe doesn't care if it's next to his farm field. That's what that is in there for.
I'm new, trying to learn here one night. And I don't know, I haven't read that much on it. But what I've been trying to read, like Iowa uses topography maps to make sure. Southern Indiana, we've got a lot of rolling hills. And I'm seeing units, and I've got to talk to somebody after class to understand all this. Are we doing anything like that to protect the ground? I mean, if you take like the 18,000 birds, is there an acreage that they have to put 18,000 birds on?
Friend houses.
I mean,
They're just in the houses.
This is K folks.
CFOs.
okay,
Yes.
but like in contained, you still gotta get rid of the manure, right?
Correct.
So what are we gonna do here? I mean, if a guy's got 20 acres of ground, what does he
Get rid of
do?
his own manure. He has to sell it to people that truck it off to spread it. Where you have
And
to be
actually-
licensed by the state to spread manure. An owner can't even spread their own manure unless they're licensed to do it. Is that right?
Yes, in consideration on Phil, on this, whenever on the plan commission, we cannot regulate of how the manure is applied to the land. That is an IDM regulation.
And they
And they
State chemist preempt you. You can't, the state chemist office has their legal authority to regulate the transport, storage, and placement of all fertilizer products, including manure. So as the planning commission, you cannot say, for example, that you must do injection, and you cannot say, for 18,000 turkeys, you must prove that you have 300 acres of land because that authority's been preempted by the state chemist office. And the state chemist office actually does take that authority even down to these smaller farms. They don't require proof of the ground available, but they do require a certification process that gets down to these smaller facilities to help ensure that they're doing the right things. It's a
Right.
very good question, and
Well,
it's
in
an obscure
actually,
law that I don't
in
even.
the description of it, there's gonna be a meeting here, it deals with category 14 of the regulation. And it's an expanded, regulation of the state chemist. And basically, this is information that probably horse people need to know. That if you have over 5 cubic yards, is it 5 cubic yards?
Yeah, I think it's
10?
10 and 4,000 gallons of manure, which
Yeah,
could
if you're
easily
over
be.
10 cubic yards, you're actually required to take this, get this permit
To be able to spread.
to be able to spread it.
Yeah.
Or even sell it.
Yeah. And, so, I mean, that is not our mechanism of this plan commission. Our duties is to probably, in our goal, I guess, and as I'm talking in there, if I'm talking out of the commission with this, my idea, we were trying to get, in the process, proper site location of combined feeding operations.
That is something that we have
And that is truly our goal.
authority over as a planning commission.
Yeah.
Whereas air quality, water quality, soil pollution, all that stuff is something the planning commission has no jurisdiction over, period.
Right.
The state only lets us regulate certain things, and that's not any of those things. The state regulates it.
Okay, the planning commission is gonna permit the building of a CFO
Correct.
with the stipulations that right now you've got it 200 feet, right?
For the center of the
Or
road.
400 feet.
200 feet from property lines, 400 feet from
property
houses.
lines. Now, so that we don't end up in a problem, who is watching the second part of it? So that we're telling them they can or they can't, right?
Yeah,
Who's watching the second part to make sure it don't get messed up and our county does cleanup? Like on the waste, you're saying they have to sell. Who is guarding that side of it?
The state.
So is they coming in inspecting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just asking.
Yeah, especially on that point on permitted farms, okay? Permitted farms by the state, okay? Our guidelines are much below numbers, where we're actually regulating site placement, as long as they hit within the parameters. But our requirements for a permit are lower than what the state. The conversation that's out here is that we've got 9 permitted farms. Well, realistically, we know that there's a lot more confined feeding operations out in the county. But as far as state guidelines, they only recognize at certain numbers, which was 30,000 poultry and 600 swine, 250,
300 cattle.
300 cows.
And I need to clarify something there also, what he's saying is that just because we would make numbers lower than that, to where we would be regulating stuff that Item wouldn't regulate as far as site placement, that still doesn't give us any authority to regulate manure handling. That's the
Right.
state chemist's office, period. Anything over 10 cubic yards
Yeah.
of manure produced is handled by the state.
So anything like that, then the state's responsible for it. So if the manure don't get traveled, the state pays for cleanup and we're not into that.
Well, actually, I can help you with that some, and the way that, and this, it's funny, because Danielle and I are over here going, well, yeah, what David said was right, in terms of, if it's an IDEM regulated facility, the laws change a touch, the state is still responsible, but essentially what happens is let's say you have a facility, in your scenario that goes bankrupt, you've got 2 dry manure handling systems, and there's waste there that, the landowner just walked away from. The state, including the state chemist's office, views any type of threat to the environment or any currently impacting of the environment. So a water line breaks and it runs out the door, even if it doesn't go very far, that's a threat to the environment. The state chemist office and or IDEM will come in. And the way that the law is written is that whoever is the owner is responsible for that. And every piece of property always has a bottom line owner, even if it's a bank. So I have seen IDEM go after banks because they were the rightful owner of that particular farm when, you know, Joe walked away and let something happen. And so in that case, the state usually pays for everything and then they sue the bank to get their money back.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I think
No,
it's a great question.
no, I
Yeah.
mean, these are not only questions that you need to be answered, but the general public need to know too.
Also, as a point of, before we get off of the whole subject that we're on, something is crossing my mind here. And it would have helped a lot if we had the projector, but obviously. we
Yeah,
don't.
I apologize.
It's not your fault.
I couldn't come up with a bulb.
Right now, currently, on the books, there's a setback ordinance for Washington County for 750 feet from a residence for a CFO.
That's regulated by the state.
Right, that's regulated by the state, exactly, so it doesn't even, you know, count anything for things that aren't regulated by the state already. The ordinance we're trying to write covers smaller operations that aren't regulated by the state, but are still big enough to be a public nuisance, basically, because of the, you know, activities going on, the smell and so forth. On the map here, when we were trying to come up with a number, she was able to take on her computer that's hooked to the projector and draw circles around every house in Washington County. And the circle, you know, the radius of the circle is that 400 feet, we've got the house, and we have a radius around it of 400 feet, which made an 800-foot circle. We did it with the 750-foot number that was already on the books, and basically the whole county was gone. The circles overlapped everywhere, except for a few remote places in very, very big open fields. We played with numbers a lot, and we made circles smaller and bigger and around all these houses on the map. Every structure on the map, period, that was ever considered a house was in the.
Yeah, there were some circles that, like, I think David found one where it was because the only way I could get the data from what's the company's name? WTH?
Yeah.
It's just addresses, and so if somebody had registered an address and then the home was demolished, well, that address is still on the books. So there were a few erroneous, but I would say less than 1% erroneous addresses.
98 or 99% of every house in Washington County showed up on the map, and the circle around it represented an 800-foot circle, 400-foot circumference. And we changed the size of those to see what, you know, took up. And with the setback we have, I mean, basically the county is gone.
Yeah.
And that was the reason for lowering the number to 400 feet, just so that, you know, people could still do anything in the county at all. So that was kind of where we got this number from. We didn't just pull it out of thin air. We sat here, we spent hours looking at the map on the projector. And, you know, that's the number we came up with.
And we played with it with the schools too. I mean, we looked at everything. I mean, we looked at several miles. We looked at, you know, so it wasn't just the residences. We looked at it.
Yeah, we looked at schools, we looked at other things, and we looked at, also there was.
I couldn't do the property line one because my computer wasn't, the
Right.
laptop I had wasn't strong enough to,
Right.
it would have crashed to process that much data.
Now, what did we ever do? Did I miss that meeting? What did we ever do with the point system?
That's what I was gonna, yeah.
Yeah, that was the next.
Reciprocal setbacks from the point system.
Well, the reciprocal setbacks, we kind of know that fly, but the point system, what did we do with that?
In the committee meetings, it was decided that the point system was too complicated and did not serve the purpose that the committee changed a lot throughout the process. You know, not just at that particular time, but it changed a lot. And the last few meetings of the committee, it was their desire to completely eliminate, you know, the ag portion of the zoning code at one time was 12 pages, and now it's 1.5. and that was the will of the committee.
Okay, I was just curious.
Question?
Hi, my name's Dusty Lewis. I live at 9104 East State Road 160 in Salem. And I guess I want someone to clarify to me, is it you guys that can change the setbacks, the distance away from residential properties? Or who is it exactly is in charge of making these changes? Someone had mentioned 1,200 feet from a residence, a mile, a half a mile, 200 feet, 400 feet. Is it you all that do that, or you can do that?
We're the advisory to the commissioners. So we will make a recommendation to the commissioners, and then final adoption will have to be done through the commission.
Okay, so my next question is, you live by chicken farms, correct?
I do, yeah.
And it doesn't bother you, correct?
It doesn't smell good sometimes, but
But it basically doesn't bother you.
not too bad.
Okay, so should you not excuse yourself from making this decision?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, and you are a hog farmer, correct? And the smell doesn't bother you, and you don't care whether it bothers your neighbors, other farmers, people?
I would say that I try to use best management practices on my farm to lead.
Is there anyone else up here that is involved in chicken farms, houses, turkeys, lives by them? The people that are not here, the one that resigned, the two that are not here?
Jim Day is a beef cattle producer out on the outside skirts of the town pasture system.
Raise cattle.
Okay. So, that's my point. Aren't you all gonna be somewhat prejudiced?
We don't make the decision, the commissioners do.
And
But
I
you
think
make
it
the
makes them-
recommendation.
Can I address that? I've addressed this before.
Yeah.
Part of the reason these people were selected is because they come from various backgrounds and have different perspectives. Because the same could be made if there were no farmers up here and only people who live next to confined feeding operations, would we not say, well, they're disqualified as well because they're prejudiced against them? The whole point is, they're here to receive input from the public and.
Mr. President, I'd like just to ask a simple yes or no question to our audience here. Is there anybody here anti-zoning? I saw one gentleman walk out, I know he would have raised his hand.
Could you define that, please?
Yeah, we mean anti-zoning.
I know from the 5 speakers who have spoken, they are all pro-zoning because they have asked for very stringent controls for the entire county. All 5 speakers have asked for stringent controls, and by definition, that is pro-zoning. And I wondered if anybody was here that was anti-zoning.
Meaning against zoning
Being
regulations.
against zoning regulations at all.
That means barns could go anywhere.
Well, that means
Not just.
not just that,
Anything.
but zero
The way it is right now.
to, yeah, the way it is right now. The way it is right now.
Right now, there's no zoning at all.
The way that it is right now.
So non-zoning, you can build anything anywhere.
No, we're not against regulating, because that's what happened, that's what happened to our banks, they were not regulated. So that's why the whole country's in a mess. But what we would like is for you people to please take into consideration the residents who don't want these hog farms, or chicken houses, or turkey houses. We want them to have.
That's pro-zoning within a mile of your house.
No, I don't even want it a mile from my house.
Well, then a pro-zoning
You know.
5 miles within your house.
There doesn't need to be any more period in this county.
Okay,
You know.
pro-zoning the entire county. I just wanted the yes or no.
Well, let me ask you a question. Well, go ahead, Dave. Go ahead. Yeah,
If the president will recognize you,
Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
Yes, I'm David Norton from 5434 North State Road 39 in Scottsburg, Indiana, which is, my address is just inside in Washington County in Gibson. And, you know, since I held up my hand, you asked a question I want to answer honestly, and I just want to note that, you know, the characterization of being anti-zoning is being, I want everything exactly as it is now.
Okay.
It's more complicated than that. I have a more, I mean, my position is that property rights ought to be respected.
Yeah.
And so a person ought to be free to do what they want as long as they don't harm their neighbor. And if you harm your neighbor should get a complete redress of grievances and be made whole. They should be able to go to court and get a full redress. So to the extent that current regulations would permit people to harm their neighbors and freely, I would be as opposed to that as I would be to prior restraint on what a businessman does. So I think if somebody builds a chicken farm, they ought to be able to build a chicken farm. But then any damage they cause, they ought to be responsible for it and subject to a lawsuit. And if they stink up their neighbors ought to be allowed to sue for the property damage, the losses that they suffer from the tort. So I believe in the property rights of this neighbor that doesn't have a chicken farm and this neighbor that does have a chicken farm. And in mine, it should be based on whether you're causing harm or not whether you meet some. You shouldn't be able to harm your neighbor just because you're 401 feet from their house. And you shouldn't be able to stop somebody from building a chicken farm just because somebody else with a chicken farm has a really stinky place. So if you can build a chicken farm and manage it well, and it doesn't smell much, and you're not polluting the streams, you ought to be able to do that without being bothered. So I just want to defend I'm the only one here, so it doesn't matter that much, so I don't want to take up a whole lot of time.
As an educational point, just 2 seconds. The zoning code does not prevent anyone from filing a nuisance suit against any other person under any circumstance. So let's say, for example, it gets enacted, they build a chicken farm 400 feet from your house. That does in no way prevent you from filing a nuisance suit against that farm. This does not prevent that in any way, shape, form, or how.
Do notices have to be sent out to
Our
inform
permitted
residents?
farms, our permitted farms of numbers, when they go for a permit, notices have to go out.
For the state.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
that's
I couldn't understand you.
On permitted farms, they have to be permitted by the state of Indiana. There are notices that go out to the neighbors.
Within a half mile of the
Yeah,
facility.
within a half mile. Question, Rhonda?
I like the idea more, instead of zoning, I like the idea of ordinances. And right now with the zoning board, there is no direct contact, so to speak, with the commissioners. You know, it's not their fault if they don't get an ordinance that they can, or zoning ordinance that they can pass, because it's up to you. Well, there's no way to fire you through voting, okay? So really, the commissioners have been let off the hook. There's no direct, you know, I just like an ordinance better than I do the zoning, which we don't seem to be able to get in control of just yet.
Mr.
Jeff,
President,
would you like to respond?
two points. Number one, I can be fired by voting. And number two, the same question asked, is the group here pro-ordinance or are they anti-ordinance?
Ordinance is different than zoning.
Right,
Zoning is
absolutely.
based on the property. Zoning, an ordinance is based on just the general rules to be held accountable for the community. You know, we have a tendency.
The issue is the same. You're either for pro-ordinance or anti-ordinance.
No, you said zoning.
I
Zoning
did
is based-
beforehand.
Zoning is based on the best use of the land, and that's why you have a map. Ordinances are based on general rules that the community can deal with. I personally, this is how I'm stating it, and I'm not trying to be aggressive or anything, that's what I prefer. I'm not necessarily against zoning, but I'm not for it either. And I prefer the ordinance style situation.
I would like to go ahead, we've got people that are on the agenda, and for time-wise, I would like to get them because they have called ahead to be on the agenda to speak in there. And so I would like to go through this particular document. We see, this is our first time as far as looking at this as a complete document in that, and we're relaying some information out. You will see this out in public and there for your review, and there will be 2 public hearings involved in this also. So there's gonna be plenty of opportunity.
Well, there's, correction, there's one mandatory public hearing, and the commissioners can elect to have a public hearing.
Okay, but what I would like to do to accommodate those people that have called in to be on the agenda, as we go through this, I would like to, Carrie, is there anything else that you really want to bring up in this particular draft at this time to relay to us?
Mine is strictly scheduling and public notice issues. I think, given my schedule, Friday would be the first opportunity I could have those last 2 sections completed and to you.
Okay.
And when you look at the calendar and you guys' next meeting is Monday, February 4th, I don't know that that allows you enough time to have it out on public notice, out in the community. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out when, and maybe you're not prepared to make that decision tonight, but just so you know, Friday or over the weekend is when I'm gonna have the final copy to you, and then that way you all can discuss when, how you want to place it on public notice and when to have a public meeting. I guess that's an easier way to say that.
Well, my preference in speaking in here, since we do have some members not present here, and you look at this, I prefer to take this document and digest it, amongst us, and to get it to our other members, and then make that decision at the February 4th meeting,
Okay.
of whenever we set up the public hearings and set that timetable up.
Then what I'll do is,
And that's my preference. Now, I'll open it up to the planning commission.
I definitely want time to read it, in its entirety. I basically have a general idea. I've read through some of it here tonight, but, and there's some, like you said, there's several people that are in here and haven't even seen it, so.
Right.
I'm not sure that I would have everyone's email, so when I get the completed document, is it appropriate to send it to you, and then you can propagate it through the commission? Is that okay? I mean, I'll send it to those emails that I have, but if I've left you off the list, it's strictly because I don't have it.
Strictly because you will not.
Yeah, that's it. I'll make sure I strike you out.
Okay.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure I knew.
Yeah, I think that'll be proper.
And then if I need to be at that February meeting, can you let me know, or just plan on it?
So we're just looking at having another informational gathering at our February meeting.
Not only to address the concerns of the planning commission as they review this thing, and also to take the comments from the general public and answer some questions in here in the process. And at that time, I think that the planning commission needs to make their recommendation of when to set up the timetable for the first public hearing, which we need to allow so many days of the full finalized documents that we want to be proposed at those out to the public, either by internet or by the library, which we have done. And was there another location we?
Auditor's office.
Auditor's office we did also.
I think in that little cheat sheet I emailed you to today, I think the days might be in that. I don't remember if I put it.
I think we had to have 10 days.
I thought it was
you know,
10, and I don't know if
Have the
it's.
opportunity to review it for at least 10 days.
Right. And at that time, we'll do that.
All right.
All right. Anything else on that? I'm gonna move on to, I've got this first, and of course, I put these in line in there, but I've had a recommendation to change an order in there. I've got the new business, I've got land use remarks in there, and the first one I had on there, I had Gary Barringer, but they asked for it to be switched around. I would like to make your statements. If you have a common statement, I can allow more time. in there for courtesy for everybody that would like to speak in there. If you have the same type of comments, I can allow more time. 5 to 7 minutes is what we've been usually allowing to make remarks. If you have a comment that you're talking for a common group, I'll extend it to 15 if you're gonna take the comments of a group. Okay, fair enough? Just trying to make it expedient for our time and the information we receive. I have Fred Schlomer.
Yes.
Okay, I recognize Fred.
What I have here actually is a kind of a packet of different materials. The first 2 pages are actually just a summary of my comments tonight. I have enough for the, should I leave some for the missing numbers too as well?
If you would, go ahead.
Great, thank you. I also have enough, at least a couple, I think, for the rest of the crowd if people want to share. I am a career health professional, including some time spent in Frankfort, Kentucky with state government there, with the Bureau of Health Services as a public health administrator. And so my role tonight here was just to share some of the extensive research and literature that exists on the many negative environmental and health effects of combined animal feeding operations. The best way we could figure to do that briefly was just to share some articles that we found online. And the first of those was a summary of a recent 2-year study conducted by Purdue into the air polluting effects of CAFOs. And this study found that the air pollution created by CAFOs, excuse me, is worse than in most U.S. cities, and that residents living near them may be breathing unsafe levels of small particle pollution, ammonia, and other toxic gases. For the complete study, please go to the link at the top of the page provided. The second is a very thorough review of the literature published by the Agribusiness Accountability Initiative, which is an advocacy group dedicated to the mission of promoting safe and ethical farming practices. If you'll flip to the last page, the first of that article, you'll see that the footnotes include references from 39 highly respected publications, including the following. And I won't belabor you by reading all those out to you. You can see them yourself. But if you just kind of look at the breadth and the depth of those, you'll see that these aren't supermarket tabloids. They're highly respected, scholarly scientific journals. And citing findings from those highly credible publications, the article details the following negative impacts: air pollution by ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, methane, and dust, accompanying strong, unpleasant, and even toxic odor of feces and urine, groundwater and surface water pollution by ammonia, antibiotics, fecal coliform bacteria, nitrates, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Health problems and even deaths for CAFO owners, workers, their families, and neighbors. These include antibiotic resistance, asthma, birth defects, chronic bronchitis, comas, depression, eye problems, fatigue, headaches, loss of consciousness, memory loss, and miscarriages. Most deaths have been from the long-term effects of some of the above diseases, but 4 members of one family, I believe this was in Iowa, died trying to save another member who had succumbed to methane poisoning in a manure pit.
Can I relate back to that? That was because they went into a structure to save somebody that had already gone in there.
Right.
And it would be the same way as if you went into a fuel tank.
Right, exactly. As with many health risks, these effects are most severe for fetuses, infants, young children, pregnant women, the elderly, and those who are already ill, i.e. our most vulnerable loved ones. Other articles we have on file describe these additional negative effects: widespread infestation by flies, gnats, and other insects, especially after CAFO manure spreading, problems disposing of large numbers of dead animals, with some CAFO operators leaving their carcasses in open fields to decay, thus creating additional unpleasant and unhealthy odors and attracting coyotes and other nuisance scavengers, decreased property values, home sales, new construction, resulting loss of tax revenues, and finally, an overall degradation of the quality of life in communities with CAFOs. We support agribusiness development when it can be done both safely and ethically. However, the above literature establishes beyond a doubt that unregulated CAFOs are not safe and ethical agribusiness. Clearly, CAFOs are bad for human health and bad for the environment. We ask that you read the attached articles closely, check out the references and links we provided, and work to enact stronger zoning laws and regulations for CAFOs in Washington County. Respectfully, Dr. Fred Schlever and Ernie Schnell, RN. Thank you.
Thank you. And did we get your address?
I'm sorry, 9161 State Road 160 East.
Okay. Next, Gary?
Yep.
This is Gary?
Gary Barricker. Want my address again?
Yes, please.
1956 South Conway Church Road. My wife asked me what I was writing, and I told her it was a white man's rant, so I'm not going to go through a lot of it. I'd like to say that I appreciate the committee listening to our concerns and trying to deal with some of the issues. I apologize for some of my typos, and my wife didn't correct my spelling in total, so there might be a few little things in there. She wanted me to tell you who I am, so just in a real brief summary, I was born in rural Michigan. I'm 25% Native American. I attended college in Kalamazoo, Michigan. You probably don't know many people that have ever been to Kalamazoo. Moved to Chicago, became a certified public accountant. After 14 years, I moved to Fort Smith, Arkansas, where I joined a company called Alpea Industries. Alpea Industries merged with Home Industries, and I was transferred to Scottsburg, Indiana. I'm currently the Vice President of Finance, which I have held since I arrived here. We're an international manufacturer to the white goods industry. We have 30-some plants around the world. So that gives you a little bit of background about me. Having a little bit of Native American in me, I believe that the farmers and Native Americans and tree huggers are kind of the stewards of the land. So that's kind of who I am, where I come from, real briefly. I'm not going to get into this because I said it's kind of a rant, but I will tell you my story briefly. You'll kind of understand where my mental set is, and then I want to cover some issues that I have with the Washington County Comprehensive Plan, which I refer to as WCCP in here. Our story is that sometime in December, my neighbor introduced himself, bought the property next to us, and told me that he was building over there, needed an easement for electricity. He alluded to the fact that he was building a house, and only a couple days later did I find out it was a turkey house. So upon that knowledge, I confronted him, of course, but I asked my wife to go do some research, so we went to all the various local governments where we would expect to find permits or filings or surveys or anything, and we could find nothing. We were told that everything was done, but we could not find anything. So where I'm coming from is a very skeptical position about the process, that this can happen. And as far as we know, IDEM still doesn't have the paperwork. There was no survey on file, so we don't know if there was actually a survey done to assure the setback meets whatever the requirements currently are. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, kind of angry about the way the process opened up to me. In the WCCP, they talk about changes to the comprehensive plan. And the final word they say on the Washington County Comprehensive Plan is that the circumstances change, and the plan should be modified to change along with them. So I personally think that the items that they have identified for economic development are not necessarily the ones that will benefit the county the most. on page 13, they talk about manufacturing is the leading economic driver in Washington County. And then they say, comma, agriculture is also a large contributor. Then right below that, they talk about Washington County lags far behind state education attainment and per capita income. I've attached on the back of this document the last 2 pages, and I have some to pass out if anybody else would like to see them. There's 2 pages. Some of the statistics are taken from the 2007 Ag Report, and the information is a little dated, but it's the best I can get my hand on. When they looked at the counties in the state, Washington County at that time had gross receipts of about $85 million from agriculture. It's not insignificant. But when you look at the data, and some of this you'll see in some of the other pages that I have there, approximately 2.7% of that remains with the farmers, about $26,000. So although there's a lot of dollar volume with agriculture, there's not necessarily a lot that accrues to the farm community on an average. And then right below that, from a publication at the IU Kelley School of Business, they talk about Indiana farm counties and what they classify as, let me get the words right here. A farming county is defined as one in which at least 25% of the farms have at least sales of $100,000. The highest classification offered the counties by the Census of Agriculture. And then they talk a little bit about the counties that have that designation. And on the second page, if any of you have that, you see all the counties. Washington County has 8.6% of the farms have gross sales over 100,000. So from that standpoint, I don't believe that the comprehensive plan as identifying agriculture as a significant contributor to the growth in Washington County is accurate. I think that that's a go ahead, ask your question. I know this is not for you, I'm getting to it. Okay. If you go to the second page, again, this is from the statistics. You guys don't have it, I apologize. But it talks about average wages in Washington County. This is from the last census. And I've highlighted in red the average farm income. And that is $26,417. And in addition to that, then there was another analysis that was done that looked at it a little bit differently. And it looked at the average size of the farms in the county. Again, these are all averages, so the numbers are skewed. There's a few that do really well, and there's a lot that, struggle. The average value in agricultural products sold per farm was $41,000, and the average total farm production expenses were $42,000. I'm assuming within the farm expenses, they've included the $26,000 in average earnings for the farmers. I just think that within the comprehensive plan that they missed one of the most important aspects that will help contribute tax dollars within the community, and that is the urban creep of greater Louisville. As Louisville grows, as Chicago when I lived there, when I lived outside of Detroit by about 60 miles in Michigan, the affluent people moved out into areas where they could have a little more land, nicer houses, better community, in a rural setting. And I've seen that in several places, and we moved here, and we specifically picked Eastern Washington County because it has those same type of attributes. So on this other sheet that Colleen has over there, if you could pass that out if you haven't. What I did here is I took a look at the county within sectors, and I looked at the median household income and the number of households within those sections of the county. And you'll note that going from from west to east, that the average income increases. And I attribute that to urban creep. You see that you go from an average of 36 in the west to 42 to 43. You drop down to more in my neck of the county, eastern central, you're at 52. You drop down directly below me, it's 50. In the central south, it's at 56, and then in the western south, it's 45. There's two sections on there in red. If you go just one section over into the next county, the average household income is 40% greater than the household income just inside Washington County. And if you go just down a little bit south, it's 64% more than the average income in the county. What I'm suggesting is that within the comprehensive plan, I know it is outside of your jurisdiction, but I think that from where you sit, you can go back to the committee and say, maybe some things need to be reevaluated based on information, and I'm happy to present to them too. But I think that this urban creep will bring more affluent people into the area, which will mean more jobs, definitely more construction jobs, definitely services that are needed to be provided, etc. And I think that that will have a greater impact, especially on the second aspect, which is the education concerns that the WCCP indicated as a problem. Because if the averages hold true that are published for agriculture, and you look at the employment numbers, basically out of the 900 or so farms that are cited in the county for this, they only employ about 105 people. So you've got the proprietor and then another 105 people that are basically employed in agriculture. So these operations, the ones that I'm most concerned about, that are unregulated, that are just underneath the regulations, are either going to only employ one person or a part-time, and in the case of the one that's going next to us, he's got another job. So, you know, that I'm concerned it's absentee ownership. So it makes me a little bit concerned about, is it going to be handled in an efficient and clean way? So those are my concerns. To get to the point for you, and I apologize, specifically, I was told that the East Washington Water District is basically tapped out. It is pretty much at capacity. There hasn't been much money spent on infrastructure there. And I was told by someone I consider to be a very reliable source that one or two more of these small operations could tax the system to the point where you could have failure and some big problems within the county. So my recommendations, or my summary of this, is that I would ask that, one, you consider or maybe have a study done on the concept of this urban creep and whether or not it's going to contribute more money than these small farming operations to the community. I strongly believe that you'll find that what I'm talking about will yield much more in tax revenue and disposable income being spent in the community than you will with the agricultural aspect, especially on the east side where it's rolling hills and that. And I can speak because we live out there and we know a number of the people. But my concern is, there needs to be a study. If East Washington Rural Water Company really is at the point where it's gonna fall apart, then I don't think that you can have any development in the eastern side until that infrastructure is taken care of. So, you know, I've got my points summarized at the end. Pardon me?
Including houses.
Including houses, yes. I mean, it has to be fixed. It has to be dealt with. So it's a little bit of a radical statement, but I'm saying that, you know, if it's been mismanaged that poorly, then annex it into the Salem Water District.
Do you understand that East Washington comes from the Salem?
Yes, I do. It's just a distribution system. Now, the unfortunate part, and I wrote this in here, the person that gave me this information, I asked him to come and talk. And he told me that he couldn't do that because he would lose his job. Because there would be retaliation by people on the committees. He didn't say this committee, you don't know if it's the other one. But that is kind of a sad comment if that's true. But he was concerned about coming in and talking about what the facts are with that particular system. So I'm here, I'm telling you that there may be a problem, and I think that somebody has to look into it and find out if it really is an issue.
Okay, we will.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Colleen? I guess this is your wife?
Yes.
I guess you have the same address then?
Yes.
You don't want to relay that?
Well, sometimes I'm in the barn, so.
Oh, okay. Been there myself. Sometimes on the porch.
There's so many rooms.
Under the new ordinance, we do propose allowing a doghouse within 50 feet.
Yeah.
It's just two documents, one are our recommendations, and I think you have one of these documents already. Okay. I have a terrible speaking voice, so I apologize if you can't hear me. And I'm just going to read what I have here. I'm coming at this from the perspective of a property owner and to speak specifically about rural and agricultural distinctions and how primarily residential people sort of fit or don't. And again, just to provide my own background, by the way, my name is Colleen Devlin Barriger. I know that was confusing to some people apparently. And I'm here to speak on behalf of myself, my husband, and our neighbors, essentially community of concerned neighbors. And just to note too, I'm not an activist. I know there's some concern that people who come and speak out against CAFOs or factory farms or what have you are sort of environmental activists, which is a scary term for people, but I'm just a person who lives in the country. I'm a retired teacher and more recently an owner and operator of an artisan bakery attached to my home where I've produced wood-fired hearthbreads for a number of clients in Louisville restaurants, including the Oak Room at Louisville's Seelbach Hotel. Although I lived most of my life off and on in Chicago, I grew up primarily in a farming community in Arkansas and in happy and close proximity to farms and farm families. North Central Arkansas is poultry country. I know that because I've lived closely with people there in that community. For the past 8 years, I've lived on Conway Church Road in Franklin Township in harmony with a diverse group of neighbors, several who farm immediately adjacent to my home. My husband and I were delighted to move to a lovely house next to farming neighbors. And one of my biggest pleasures in life, truly, and I'm not exaggerating, is the sight of them sort of trundling around in their pastures on their tractors, just beyond our horses' pastures. My professional background is teaching, research, and writing at the college level, writing and research for major educational and publishing venues such as World Book, St. James Press, Scott Forsman and Company, and the Chicago Sun-Times. For several years, I worked for the American Dental Association, formulating policy and accreditation reports for the Council on Dental Education and the Commission on Dental Accreditation, authoring their first training manual for teaching accreditation teams how to interpret and apply accreditation standards and how to conduct accreditation site visits nationally. It was not an exciting job, but it was challenging. I'd like to comment very briefly, though, on a couple of the assumptions that appear to be guiding the decision to turn Washington County into a poultry hub. That's our understanding, at any rate. This is what we've been told by a number of sources. It was in the news that Farbest Foods considers Washington County its poultry hub, turkey hub, and so we took that at face value. And then on behalf of my neighborhood and others in the community, I'd like to offer some suggested guidelines Washington County might consider in formulating zoning regulations for concentrated feeding operations. And that's the list that I gave you. And I got to that, several of us got to that, by examining existing zoning regulations in counties surrounding us. So we didn't just pull them out of thin air. We've been told that a major premise for constructing these new operations is that according to widespread studies, and this is what all the poultry operations tend to say, at least they support the studies in their own behalf, that in something like 40 years, the world's population will have multiplied so dramatically that poultry growers feel obliged to begin constructing these operations now in order to address potential mass hunger in the future. Taking that premise to its logical conclusion, we might just as well begin producing more practically everything right now. It just makes sense. We need more diapers. We need more formula. We need more schools. We need more everything. Currently, however, there's no increased demand for poultry, and in fact, for several years, poultry consumption has been in decline. As even Ted Seeger, president and owner of Farbest Foods, noted to the House Congressional Committee on Agriculture in November of 2011. As Seeger noted, turkey production declined 11% between 2008 and 2010. He also suggested, this is documented, part of the documents for the Committee on Agriculture. It's part of the White House, the government documentation. He also suggested that given continued increases in corn prices, the poultry industry will continue to decline. That, and this is quoting him exactly, more poultry companies will go bankrupt and more jobs will be lost. And yet, at the same time today, there's more poultry product on grocery store shelves than you can shake a stick at. Many reasonable people might question whether it's particularly cost-effective to increase poultry production now for a population that hasn't yet been born. Organizations who study world hunger have suggested that even with current rates of impoverishment and hunger here in the United States, we are enjoying record rates of obesity, and that there is in fact an overproduction of many foods, particularly for American fast food chains, which I'm pretty sure we can all agree are responsible for mass production of pretty unhealthy foods. And also that there is a marked overabundance of food waste, both in the restaurant industry and at home. People are going hungry primarily, not because there's a shortage of food production. They're going hungry because they're impoverished. Producing more food won't help those who can't afford to buy it in the first place. In other words, this isn't about addressing current or future hunger. It's about creating demand for people who can afford to spend now. And it's about opportunity. And I'm speaking specifically not about existing farmers here in the county who are producing food and who are feeding people, which of course I have no objection to. I eat. I'm a carnivore. I eat meat. I eat everything. It's about turning Washington County into a poultry hub for particular big corporate agribusinesses. There's nothing inherently wrong with creating demand, and people have been selling products of one variety or another since the beginning of time. It's what PR and marketing were born to do, and most of us don't object until it negatively affects us. The Washington County Comprehensive Plan asks how land use planning can improve the quality of life for all our residents, and wonders why, after surviving 196 years without formal planning, we should start now, suggesting that one reason is to prevent conflict between people with contradictory values or needs. Many of us here tonight are here because Washington County, I believe, many of us believe, and from what I'm hearing, is rapidly approaching a sort of tipping point in those conflicting values and needs. A local real estate webpage notes, this is in keeping with what my husband was talking about, notes the benefits of living in Washington County, particularly given our attractive proximity to Louisville, over 86 years selling dream properties like vacation homes, resort homes, retirement homes, small city and town residential properties, lake homes, ranches, farms, land, recreational property, investment property, and many more lifestyle properties. No other company has more experience and inventory to choose from to help you find your freedom. Presumably, they will be revising their website to include the caveat that you may wake up one morning to discover someone is building a massive factory farm facility a few hundred feet from your dream or investment property. Additionally, contrary to an apparent widespread belief that rural necessarily means agricultural, the terms are not synonymous, not even according to the United States Census Bureau, the Office of Management and Budget, or the United States Department of Agriculture, the three government agencies whose definitions of rural are widely accepted as definitive. As all three agree, geographical areas are primarily defined according to two types of urban populations, classified according to population density. Everything else, they note, in other words, everything that falls outside those urban classifications is simply defined as rural, which may include farms and farm residences, churches, small businesses, light industry, parks and forests, lakes, streams, and other waterways, and non-farm residences. With those distinctions in mind, we would like to offer a few recommendations for zoning to confine feeding operations which are based on existing regulations, as I noted, in a variety of Indiana counties, including Union County, Randolph County, these are all fairly proximate, or some of them are, Scott County, and several of the southern counties between us and Louisville.
Are you referring to this first page?
Yes, I am. If I could, may I read these just quickly?
Could you kind of wrap it up, please?
Sure. These are our
Excuse me?
yes.
If I could yield some of my time to help Colleen.
Would you like to read them? Can I yield
No.
my time to John? He's on the,
I just
Okay,
like to yield
thank
my
you.
time.
That's
short.
fine, if he wants to yield his,
time,
he can yield his time, thank you.
these are our recommended zoning and health measures for operations defined as confined feeding operations by the Washington County Comprehensive Plan, or WCCP, which was published in 2010. We recommend that a moratorium be declared on any new construction of confined feeding operations as defined by the Washington County Comprehensive Plan until the County Planning Commission enacts appropriate ordinances regarding zoning and health measures governing such operations. That all confined feeding operations as defined by the WCCP be required to apply for a county permit, including a health permit. That public notice and hearings be required for construction of any type or size of confined feeding operation as a standard practice in other Indiana rural counties. That an accreditation process be set in place for all confeeding operations that fall outside the jurisdiction of the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. That all confined feeding operations as defined by the WCCP be required to provide 24 hours per day on-site monitoring, and by that I mean no absentee farmers, which is the case with the person who just bought the property next to us, to erect turkey barns. He's not there, he doesn't live close to us, He said he understands nobody wants to live close to them, and he's putting them right next door to my house. He lives 5 miles away. That a setback be imposed of no less than 2,000 feet between any new confined feeding operation and an adjacent church, school, or residence. That all confined feeding operations be required to provide a protective berm of trees between the operation and adjacent properties. That all confined feeding operations be required to have a secondary water source. That a cash or surety bond be furnished to the Washington County Commissioners for existing operations and before construction of new confined feeding operations to ensure proper cleanup, disposal of waste material, I know you're doing some of this already, including animals, or any other necessary remediation of the confined feeding operations property. But the guy next to us wouldn't have to, as I understand it, conform to the requirements you're putting into place because he falls under the numbers. That a tax be imposed on the contracting corporations to be remitted to the county in order to fund insurance for the purpose of reimbursing residential property owners adjacent confined feeding operations for any decrease or percentage of any decrease in value of residential property upon sale of the property. And this is in keeping with the document that I handed out in addition to this. And I think it's page 17 that those values are described in depth by a national appraiser who has worked with these operations for many years on the impact of CAFOs and CAFO-like operations on residential, adjacent and neighboring residential properties. That in keeping with the WCCP's goal to steer residential properties to areas with existing infrastructure, and also in keeping with the WCCP's recognition that Washington County serves as a bedroom community for the greater Louisville area, enact districting along the major Washington County highways and county roads. In other words, 160, 60, 135, and 56. This is taken directly from several zoning documents from other surrounding counties, which would prohibit developing confined feeding operations for a specified distance on either side of those highways and roads. And finally, in order to promote Washington County's socioeconomic development, we recommend some portion of East Washington County be zoned to prohibit developing, not to prohibit existing, but developing confined feeding operations as defined by the Washington County Comprehensive Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the Planning Commission? Tony McCollum? Yes, please.
My name's Anthony McClellan.
Oh, Anthony, okay.
Tony's not what I go by, so just for officially, it's Anthony McClellan. My address is 880 Wayne Vista Drive, Brownstown, Indiana.
Brownstown.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask why you're addressing the Washington County Planning Commission?
I own land within Washington County.
All right.
And hopefully my story that I've got to tell you will explain it a little bit further.
All right.
Just a little bit of background information. I do have a bachelor's and master's degree in civil engineering from University of Louisville. I am a registered professional engineer in the states of Indiana and Kentucky. The things that I will express tonight, though, are not intended to be representation of engineer opinions. They're just mine. So just want to make sure that that was clear. I am the 8th generation that's been raised on the McClellan family farm. And hopefully that will be important here in a little bit, but our family has been here since 1819, been here for a long time. And what happens around here is important. I do come from a farm background, intend to come back to a farm background as well. I've got 5 kids in total. 2 of my daughters attend Eastern High School, and when I told them I was talking tonight, they were appalled. Daddy, what are you going to say? So I'll try not to embarrass them. Not too long ago, I would not have thought I would have been standing here. I've heard somebody else say this. I've always been a believer in property owner rights. I thought should be able to do whatever you want, as long as you own that property and you don't damage somebody else. That's been my belief. And I still believe that, but then the definition of what causes harm, you know, that's something that's hard to define. So I'm gonna tell you a story here today, a quick one, and try to explain to you a concern that I have and see if we can address that. And I did want to say that I appreciate your work so far. You guys have gotten a lot further than I realized as far as your work on the ordinance. And I think that's a work in the right direction. Now, what I have is some more thoughts to maybe consider as you guys are developing that. I am the 8th generation. I was raised on a farm that at one time was called Springdale Farms. The reason it was called Springdale Farms is because of all the springs that are around the farm. Those springs actually served as our water for several years. We didn't have city water. Those same springs are actually charged with water that starts where these turkey houses are going. So one of the questions I've got is, does the ordinance consider that, or should it consider that type of topography? IDEM refers to karst topography, but there's this in between where we have springs, and I can show you lots of them. Drank from lots of them. I'm not sure that I would drink from some of those at this point, so something to keep in mind. I mentioned I'm in Brownstown. I started plans here earlier this year to return to Washington County. And part of the plan was to buy part of the farm and also to look for additional ground to add to the farm, because the farm as it is now probably doesn't support me being on the farm without some additional ground. So the truth is, I actually was putting together a package to try to purchase the same ground that the turkey farm is going on. And I want to make sure everybody knows that you know, I'm divulging my interest here. Well, my business plan was a little bit different. What I had in mind was row crops, but row crops by themselves, as most of us know, won't pay for ground that's $4,000 an acre. It just won't. So I had a plan to add to that tomatoes, peppers, other specialty products to try to increase the money so I could pay for that ground. Now, in addition to that, what I was hoping to do is to add grapes and eventually to put up some barns and host some events. The idea being that we would take the approach of using agritourism as the way that we would pay for our farm. The reason I bring the agritourism up is that in the thoughts that we've got with the ordinance that you guys are looking at, you address a lot of things. But what happens to folks that are in the agritourism market? And does this take that into consideration? And I do want to tell you guys that, you know, what you're doing is hard work. You cannot appease everybody, and I appreciate that. So I just want these things to be things to consider. That's all that I ask. Now, you guys are working on the ordinance. Here's some questions that I've got, and I don't expect them to be answered, just questions. These are areas that are covered in the CFO rules. Are they covered in your ordinance? And I don't know for sure. Performance standards, waste management plans, mortality management, and that's kind of one that's important. The waste management, the fertilizer, the manure, we understand that is covered by IDEM. What happens to the dead animals in these smaller operations? Public comment periods, that's something I think that could be added to the ordinance that would help so that we get these things out in the air before stuff gets built. Manure handling and storage, I think that one's probably covered. Setbacks, you've seen some suggestions. How about an emergency response plan? What happens if that manure gets out of the lagoon? What do you do for it? Current CFOs have got to have a preventive maintenance program. Is that addressed in your plans? If not, it would be a good idea to have it. You guys mentioned the setback of 300, or no, I'm sorry, the CAFO or the CFO rules are 300 feet setback for property lines. You guys have got 2.
two, 4 for residents, and 2 for
Right. Okay, 200 feet, is 200 feet the state line, state requirement or your requirement?
farmers.
Okay. State requirements,
Yeah,
I thought I read 300 feet.
I don't think so.
Okay. You guys mind to check that?
We,
And the reason I asked is because I looked at it, so. One of the things that I was gonna ask there is, and it sounds like that's out of the question, but you guys have got 200 feet now. I understand you guys are regulating houses that are not under state standards. So 200 feet is still an improvement, but consider 300 feet, if it's in the state regs. If it's not, forget it. The one other thing that I want to recognize, I do know that there are clean CFOs. There are clean AFOs. I expect that several folks on this group know or operate those facilities. The problem is not everybody knows how to do that. When you look at sewage plants, there are folks that, there's science to it, but there are folks that know the art. When something goes wrong, they know what to do to fix it. I believe the same thing exists with these facilities. And it's my opinion that some guidelines from folks that know to folks that haven't run these things would be a good thing. And so I'd ask that you consider that and pass on the art of running these facilities to those that don't have the same experience. I think that could be a great thing that makes this a good thing for everybody, not just for one. I think I'll pass that. You know, the biggest question I've got is, and the reason I bring this up, I had a plan for agritourism. Now, the reality is that business plan is out of the question now in the facility I was looking at. When I mentioned to my daughters the fact that we might try to host weddings next to a turkey house, I was told pretty bluntly that will not work. And I don't think it will. And so the question I would have for you is, this is another agribusiness. Please take that into consideration. Think about those that exist in the county now. What happens if we have an AFO that runs next to them? And I think you guys are taking the right approach. You're trying to address some of these things, but please put that in your thoughts as you continue to develop that. And I think that's probably all I've got.
so thank you. Anthony?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That concludes the amount of people that has to be on the agenda. On there. I think I've got Fred and Don, you relinquished your time to Colleen and Gary and Anthony. So those were the 5 that I had. Correct.
Could I make an ending comment? Maybe?
At the very end,
Okay, very end.
yes.
Okay.
Going on to new business, appointments and vacancies on Plan Commission. I have a resignation letter of Shauna here someplace. I'll just read this real quick because it's short. It is with regret that I am writing to inform you that my decision to resign my position on the Washington County Plan Commission effective immediately. My other commitments have become too great for me to be able to fulfill the requirements of my position on the board. And I feel it is my best for me to make room for someone with the time and energy to vote to this job. Thank you for the opportunity. Best regards, Sean Hubbard. So, do we want to act and accept this?
I don't think we have a choice.
No.
I will say the county commissioners already acknowledged knowledge of this. It may have been, I don't know if I'm the one who told them or how that came about.
All right. I think as far as minutes for the planning commission, we need to acknowledge this letter and make it either yea or no. So, yes. Bill Marshall has made the motion to accept. Do I have Adam DeFore second? It's open for discussion. Seeing none, we'll take it to a vote. All in favor of accepting the resignation, signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, same. Motion carried and accepted.
Who's seconded?
Adam. All right, next order of business. Too many numbers. Billing of contractual services with Carrie's company. We have to have those vouchers in by the 18th of this month.
It's in.
Okay,
I
it's already-
took care of that.
You already, sorry, so now that that's been acknowledged, that's already been done.
Although, can I raise an issue?
Yes.
It's been submitted, but I got a call from the auditor's office of when they want to place that in line for payment. And my understanding is it wouldn't actually be placed in line for payment and approval by the commissioners until later, until we're done, or actually it was.
Yeah, I don't know, I haven't talked to them, but, my proposal was when you had the final copy, which is, which in my anticipation talks Friday, Saturday at the latest, then I feel like I've fulfilled my contractual obligations at that time. I
Okay.
didn't anticipate being paid before then, so.
Okay, but you wanted to go ahead and place it in line for payment now, because we've got a draft, is that what you're saying, or don't?
I would like for you to look at it and see if you interpret it the same way. but-
Okay, because I haven't looked.
I will tell you that it was basically we have to do this so we can encumber funds from previous budget.
That's been done.
budget.
That part's been done.
So that's been done.
It's just when they, the invoice is there, it's just when you all decide to cut the check.
Okay. All right, now, open, well.
No, I just
Paul.
need to make a note, okay, so. Go ahead.
All right, at this time, I know we're getting late in time, but I want to have the opportunity for people that are not on the agenda that would like to talk. And I know, Dawn, you asked, and at this time, 3 minutes, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is Don Rogers on 1296 Lockenauer Lane in Salem. And just wanted to make some comments on a few things like the assessment of property value concerning the chicken houses or turkey houses of, I guess I should call them factory farms, since you're talking them all. Talked to Jason at the assessor department here in town, and he stated that there was a difference according to location. For example, if a three barn system, and if all we're talking about is three barn systems, was placed closer to, say, the outer city limits of Salem, or whatever that buffer zone is, it would be assessed a little higher. Or if it was located in a wetland or a hilly area where you actually couldn't build, of course, it'd be a lesser assessment. Or if it was moved over to a residential area or an area that's close to an industrial park, there's 4 different figures that he goes by, and he says he really wishes he could get involved with the county commissions on this. He's never been asked. I asked why. He says, well, I don't know, I never asked either. So, but he said he's probably be important to get involved with the county assessor as well. Now, there's an adverse effect on that. According to location, if you were to place a factory farm near a residential area that has a certain amount of value, before the assessment drops, there has to be a proven appraisal of property value drops. So something has to drop before the actual assessment drops. You have to say, hey, you have to actually approach the assessor and say, there's a change here, and here's the proof. Then the assessment drops. I think that's something to look into, because now that draws up the concern for your surrounding neighbors. Well, my investment has dropped. okay? I think I asked a couple months ago, were there any safeguards? After a facility is built next to any neighboring property, are there any safeguards? I have yet to hear if there's any. I mean, I looked in your paperwork you have online, I didn't see any. I know that there's guidelines by the state that a lot of people fall back onto. But I think it's our responsibility as a community and the leaders of the community to help serve the concerns of the property owners around this county. We talked today about, are we anti-zoning or pro-zoning? What is, if we're looking at Scott County and they were trying to adopt as, let's say for example, a bioincinerator, was that a zoning, did they hand it over to the people and say, let's first create a zoning not to put this in our county? To me, that would give the people the power, a voice to decide that. And I really think it's important that the people in this county feel like they still have a say-so in this, a voice to help guideline their health and property values. I mean, if there's no safeguard, there's no guarantees to sustain the same outdoor activities, okay, that they're used to sustaining. Like, you have gardens that may be affected by it. I think we said we had a setback of 200 feet, 400 foot from property line, but not 200 foot from property line, but there's a 400 foot state standard. What happens
From residents.
from residents? From, you mean from the actual building?
Correct.
Okay, but right now we have 750 feet.
Permitted farm.
Mhm. So if that's like a right-of-way or a backset across somebody else's property, what happens to that property? Can they no longer do anything on it? Is there a limitation? It's just a question. And I think I would like to end this with, what are the safeguards put in place for our domestic animals, the wildlife, the insects that the animals feed on, our property values, our health concerns that we may be subjected to?
Thank you, Tom. Rhonda, David, we've already, somebody that hasn't spoken.
I didn't talk. He
I thought I heard something come out of your mouth.
characterized my position, and I wanted to say what my position really was rather than having him say it.
Well,
Did he say
I
anything?
know you've addressed, if
This is
anybody else,
something new. I can't speak
if
to this
anybody
meeting.
else brought something up and would like to talk before I turn it over to Dave.
I just want to say that we have a projector and a screen that we can bring at each meeting. So you just plan on us having something here?
Thank you
So,
very
yeah.
much.
All right.
Well, you know, yeah, you could have
It's
just
been
emailed.
hard.
Yeah.
And I honestly, when I turned it on to check it, it was, at 4:30 would have been the only time I could have.
Sweetie, you're fine. I mean, it's out there in the car now. So what we're just gonna do is just go ahead and bring it all the time.
Thank you very
And,
much, Ron.
and just, yeah.
I
And
appreciate it.
if anyone else wants to make a presentation, just let me know beforehand and I'll bring the computer. I have internet access now everywhere and we can present what needs to be presented.
All right, anybody else? David?
Thank you. David Norton, 5434 North State Road 39, Scottsburg in Gibson Township. I just wanted to say, you were given what you thought my position was, honestly. So I just wanted to make it clear what my position really was, that's all. And I want to say, I think that you all have made improvements to what I've heard about the plan, the proposed ordinance. So whether I'm for it or against it, I think it is becoming better as time passes. And I thank you for hearing the public from different, and there is a difficult to, you can't please everybody, and you're trying to get about through. have some difference of opinion about where we would want to go, but I just want to say, I think you have improved what was there. It's been a lot of work. I just want to acknowledge that. And, let's see, I have about a couple of things to proposals that you might put into the ordinance. I think it would be good if there was, the ordinance said something about the ability to register restrictive covenants of homeowners associations or property owners associations, so that people in a community or a little valley, maybe some farmers or some households, or made a covenant to, like, I won't do this, and the neighbor promises to do that. It's you know, you might want to say it has to be well defined, or and charge them, you know, some kind of a charge, because, you know, you would want your lawyer to look at it and make sure it's not full of vague, ambiguous language. So that's one suggestion. You can take it or leave it. That also might be a solution for places like Fredericksburg, that a government was too expensive for them, but people in the community that still would like some kind of community thing, and some of those people lived outside of the old city limits. So if those people that want something, you know, wouldn't have to follow the old city limits, so some kind of a homeowners association that was voluntary, where they all agreed to create a homeowners association with a restrictive covenant, and then register that with the county, so that when people buy and sell property, the zoning board could say, you know, this has a restriction, you know. And I think if people want to register that and pay for that, you know, to maintain it, because I know it's going to be a cost to the county. So that's a second suggestion. And that maybe one of my problems, and I think a lot of these other people, that some of their problems could be somewhat addressed by a sentence in the ordinance saying that nothing in the ordinance would be interpreted to protect against being sued for a tortious injury. I don't know, Tom could probably come up with a legal way to say that, but you know what I mean. And it seemed like somebody said something at an earlier meeting when there were some poultry farmers that this would help prevent nuisance lawsuits. Now that might have been somebody speaking out of turn, and you since found out different, and that, you know, I'll say
reciprocal setback.
It wouldn't have, it would not have prevented them from filing a lawsuit, a nuisance suit against the owner, but it would have aided in, you know, in general, people who file nuisance suits against farms are closer than 400 feet, so we wouldn't have enough protection.
It would indirectly prevent it, because it would prevent somebody from moving in and building next to
and then filing it
and then
out.
suing.
Yes.
So in other words, it wouldn't impair their ability to sue, but it would stop them from ever being able to build and being in the positions.
Well, no, it just is it's more of a likelihood.
That's likely.
Yes, it's more likely that someone would move in within 400 feet and sue nuisance than someone greater than.
So that's all that was ever meant by that mention of
Yes,
nuisance.
exactly.
Okay.
Because I was the one that said it, that's why I wanted to clarify.
Well, it bugged me ever since you said, now I understand exactly what you mean, so
Yes.
I'm satisfied on that.
It was with the reciprocal setbacks, and that got taken out.
Thank you, David. You're welcome. Anybody else? I'm having a lot of fun here now.
I just want to correct my statement.
All right, very
It is
good.
100 feet, you were right, I apologize for that.
All right.
Sorry about that.
Okay. You know, as we go through these, I mean, they are fairly lengthy, and there's a lot of time that's spent, you know, in the meantime to get it to here. There has been a lot of time engaged in here. I mean, we've really tried to pull off of a lot of different documents and a lot of different things that are going on throughout the state in agricultural and residential areas, and trying to develop something for Washington County that, as I see with this group and with other groups that's come in, that there are concerns, and the concerns are different amongst other groups in there. And as we try to weigh those concerns out and to try to as equalize and to give equal opportunity, you know, for input, and then also what we do in a document that we're trying to develop, we are trying to get balance. I can tell you that there are gonna be things in people that are on all sides are not gonna like. Now, but as I see, there are a lot of people concerned. There's industry that's concerned about their operation. There's residential people that are concerned about that. The citizens of Washington County are concerned, and we are trying to address that. I do regard your comments, and we're gonna take those into considerations as we go on. There will be public comments as we get this document cleaned up a little bit. This is our first time that we've actually seen it as a full plan commission, and I think it is pertinent for us to take it under advisement, read it, and as we work with it February 4th, go on and pursue and open it up for public comment, and you will see the full document. I wish that we could have seen it visually together up here on the wall, but it just didn't happen tonight, but you will see the full document. It will be disclosed, and it will be transparent for you to look. At this time, it is 20 till 10, and I haven't ate supper yet, and I would really like to move on. So is there any other business needs to be brought before this plan commission?
I move we adjourn.
Jeff Souders made a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? I have the floor, a second. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Thank you very much.